what is something special that the Sonic franchise has that no other game has? There's quite a few things I could list, but for today's video, I want to focus on something very specific: the Super Sonic boss fights. As Sonic fans, we all got our issues with the games, but one of the most consistent aspects of all of the games is the final fights that feature Super Sonic. So that got me thinking, what makes these boss fights so fun? What makes them so memorable? Why are they special? This is especially important now considering the latest Sonic game being Sonic Frontiers has you playing as Super Sonic on multiple occasions. And people absolutely adored that part of the game. It's just one of those things that even if you think Sonic Frontiers is mediocre or bad, you gotta at least admit that these fights are something else. It's been so heavily praised that Sega's actually going ahead and adding a new super form into Sonic Frontiers. And people are loving it. I can't really blame him. This is the coolest Sonic has been in a long time. I might get some flack for this, but maybe this is the coolest Sonic has ever been. So for this video, I wanted to explore what makes Super Sonic so special, and also what makes it so unique to Sonic. But before all that, make sure to gaslight the subscribe button into clicking itself, and hit the bell. And with all that said, let's get right into it. Before we talk about what makes the Super Sonic boss fight so great, let's talk about how it all started. Back in the classic game, Super Sonic had a bit of an evolution. For Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Super Sonic isn't even used for any of the boss fights. In fact, the game doesn't even make it mandatory. It was more so a reward for the players who took time to master the special stages. It just didn't help that the special stages they kinda sucked. Now please keep that in mind, Super Sonic has always been a reward and not a challenge. You are never forced to get all of the Chaos Emeralds in these games. If you do decide to go out of your way and get all of the emeralds, then your reward is the ability for Sonic to enter super form, which makes the game significantly easier. You don't take damage, you move faster, you jump higher, you're practically invincible, alright? Nobody's touching you. That was until Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Super Sonic had the same premise in this game as it did with Sonic 2, except this time, on top of having the ability to go super, you also unlocked a secret ending where you have to fight Dr. Robotnik in space. The boss fight wasn't hard at all. You can just collect the rings and redirect the rockets into Robotnik. It's not that challenging. If anything, the boss fight before this, where you're not in your super form, is even more challenging, so you know, it's kind of easy. Regardless of its difficulty, this final boss was like super cool and it was very iconic as well. But more importantly, it kind of started the trend of Super Sonic boss fights being the final fights of the game. This is what laid the foundation for future Sonic games, because the very next game, Sonic Adventure, took it to the next level. I mean, what can I say? Sonic Adventure is goated. Of course this game set an amazing trend because it's the GOAT! Anyways, what Sonic Adventure did is it doubled down on the secret Super Sonic boss fight ending that Sonic 3 had. Now, in Sonic Adventure, upon completing all of the playable characters' stories, you get access to the final story, where you fight Perfect Chaos as Super Sonic. The boss fight is incredible, it's really fun, but something that may catch you off guard is the fact that it's extremely easy. Super Sonic just makes these boss fights a pushover. To be honest, I think that's what I like about him. I feel like a lot of you are too focused on what you're used to or wanting a game to be exactly like what other games are. Typically, games are all about overcoming a challenge. The more you progress, the harder it gets. So it only makes sense for the final boss to be the final test of the player's skill. But I don't think that's a rule that has to be followed. I think some rules are meant to be broken, like stealing the last pie in the fridge or robbing a gas station while being heavily armed. I do understand that some games should have specific principles to follow, but if a game breaks a principle and it somehow works, I think we should allow it, you know, let it be. Not every game has to follow the common rule. We can break a few rules, and if it's fun, then that's all that really matters, right? Super Sonic boss fights, theoretically, don't sound all that great, but in its execution, it's amazing. The final fight of Sonic Adventure isn't supposed to be challenging, it isn't supposed to test the player's skill. It's a reward before the player beating the game. You played the game until the end, so here's a big enemy to fight with some nice music in the background. Every Sonic game since Sonic Adventure does this, and it causes boss fights to have this special feeling to them. It's very unique, and honestly, I can't think of any other game that does this. My point is that Super Sonic doesn't follow the rules of a traditional video game, but I think that's okay. In other games, the final boss is a final challenge, but in Sonic games, the final boss is a final reward. The game gives you godlike powers and tells you to go crazy with it. There's nothing quite like it, and it leaves such a great, everlasting impression on players. I will never forget the ending to Sonic Unleashed. It was truly a remarkable experience, and honestly, I don't think Sonic has ever gotten more climactic than that. That was ambitious. However, I will come down to ground level and say that Sonic games should provide a hard final boss before the Super Sonic final boss, so that we can get the best of both worlds. Either way though, I'll defend the fact that these boss fights are amazing until the day I die. They're just that good, and the uniqueness of it is what enthralls me. What got me thinking about these boss fights was Sonic Frontiers. Of course, we got a new update coming up soon, which will probably feature a new Super Sonic boss fight, but even before that update, Sonic Frontiers had the best boss fights of any Sonic game ever. The first time I reached the end of Kronos Island and Sonic went super, my jaw dropped to the floor. That's when I knew Sonic Frontiers was a banger. It's kinda sad because before Sonic Frontiers, there was a large gap of 3D Sonic games that didn't have a Super Sonic fight. These final bosses, while being debatably the best part of both of these games, didn't feature Super Sonic. And that was kinda sad, like, how are you gonna not include Super Sonic? But then with Sonic Frontiers, we got like 4 different Super Sonic fights, and that's just amazing. It's almost like Sonic Team was apologizing for forgetting what made Super Sonic so special for the past decade. Again, it should not work. Super Sonic does not sound great on paper, but it works. And it especially doesn't sound great on paper when you consider the fact that there are multiple Super Sonic boss fights in this one game. You'd think it would get dull or boring eventually, but it doesn't. It's amazing every time. Sonic Team, after a decade of misusing Super Sonic or just not including him at all, used Super Sonic in Sonic Frontiers and understood perfectly what made Super Sonic so special, and they even flirted with the idea. You beat the first island, here's your reward, a giant titan to fight with kick-ass heavy metal. And while the combat system is shallow, it still feels incredibly satisfying to just destroy this titan. All 4 of the islands in this game has this as a reward, and it is the perfect reward to a Sonic game. Nothing feels better than completing an island and being able to fight a titan. That's just fun. By the way, heavy metal is actually like perfect for Sonic and to a further extent Super Sonic. Sonic Team, please don't stop with the heavy metal. I do not care how edgy it is. This was it, all right? This is the music that we want. These Super Sonic Titan fights are probably the best part of Sonic Frontiers. Like, sure, the gameplay is great and the gameplay loop is amazing, but the reward is what ties everything together and makes Sonic Frontiers such an addicting experience. I may still have my gripes with Sonic Frontiers, like, you know, cyberspace is cyberspace, but I don't think I'm ever going to forget the first time I ever fought a Titan in this game. And honestly, it feels like I created a memory that I'm going to look back on very fondly, and that's the magic of Super Sonic. You always remember the most rewarding aspects of a game. Those are the moments where your gameplay has payoff. And Super Sonic boss fights are such a great way of giving the player a nice payoff for all of their hard work. That's what makes Super Sonic so special, and that's why Sonic Frontiers should set the standard for all of these Super Sonic boss fights going forward. I want some boss fights to blow Sonic Frontiers out of the water in the next game. I just hope that Sega doesn't give up on Super Sonic or cheap out in some way. But something tells me that they wouldn't do that, especially after Update 3, which is teasing a new super form. This is the first time since the release of Sonic Frontiers where I've been truly excited for what's coming next from Sonic. Please God, let Superstars be good. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I have some great content planned that will be coming out very soon, so stay tuned for that. And with that said, make sure to lightly tap the subscribe button and hit the bell. I love you guys. I'll see you very soon. Peace out. My channel members are Snack Pigeon, Neol, Scully, AHS, Francis T218, Sonic Man 7153, Monic, Archer XYZ, Pie Studios, Bananas, Junion Rings, Chip Chap Chop, The Squeaker Nerd, Super Shax Boom, and Super Saiyan Sonic. Thank you all for supporting the channel. Make sure to click one of the in-card screen videos here. Love you guys. Peace out.